My name is Zoe. I'm 34 years old, living in Boston with my 7-year-old daughter, Emily. One stormy night, I rushed into my parents' mansion, my hair dripping wet, my clothes filthy, my hands trembling as I clutched Emily's medical files. The words burst out of me and stunned the whole house. My parents spent $300,000 on my brother's wedding but refused to save their granddaughter's life. As I sobbed and cried out, "My daughter, if she doesn't have surgery right now, she'll die." Music, laughter, and the clinking of wine glasses still echoed from the living room. It was Nathan's engagement party, my brother the pride of the entire family. I stood at the doorway, my heart breaking, watching my mother lean in, laughing with wealthy guests, my father raising his glass in a toast, while I begged for my little girl's life. Can you imagine it when your own blood turns their back as your child lies in a hospital, each second closer to death? If you've ever been abandoned by your family in your darkest moment, share your thoughts below so I know I'm not the only one. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I'll have the strength to tell the rest of this story. Because from that tear-soaked night on, my life and Emily's turned down a path no one could have predicted. I was born and raised in a family that always looked successful and elegant from the outside. My father, Richard, owned a well-known furniture store in Boston. My mother, Margaret, had been a college lecturer before retiring early to tend to the family and join social clubs. To outsiders, we were a perfect family, a grand mansion, elegant parties, accomplished children. But behind those walls, favoritism and coldness seeped into every relationship. I was the eldest, 4 years older than my brother Nathan. From childhood, I felt that in my parents' eyes, I never shone bright enough to make them proud. When I won a scholarship to study architecture, my mother only nodded blandly and said, "Well, that's fine. But architecture doesn't make you rich." In contrast, when Nathan merely won a high school basketball game, my father hugged him as if he'd earned an Olympic medal. When Nathan prepared for college, my parents didn't hesitate to sell part of the store's shares to pay all his tuition, and even bought him a small apartment downtown. I was different. I worked shifts at the library, took sketching jobs, then borrowed student loans just to finish my 4 years. I didn't complain. I simply told myself I had to stand on my own. But the older I got, the clearer the invisible line between me and them became. When I graduated with my architecture degree, my father only said, "Congratulations, now you're on your own. Don't expect us to help." I nodded silently. I had grown used to that tone. I started working at a small design firm, earning little, but I loved the job. I believed I could slowly build a career. Meanwhile, Nathan quickly rose with my parents' backing. After finishing his business degree, he had nothing to worry about. They invested to open a branch store for him. Later, when he wanted to enter real estate, my mother withdrew a large sum from her retirement fund to support him. Each time, I only watched quietly. I married young. My ex-husband, Daniel, had once been kind and ambitious. But after Emily was born, everything changed. He drifted away, drank heavily, and finally left with another woman. I became a single mother when Emily was only 4. That was the hardest period of my life working, raising my daughter and enduring my parents' subtle scorn. I still remember one Christmas dinner. Nathan proudly announced he had bought a new sports car. My father clapped him on the shoulder, laughing, "You deserve a reward for working hard." I just sat silently, Emily beside me holding her worn-out doll. My mother glanced at me and sighed. "Zoe, why couldn't you choose a man like your brother did? Now you struggle alone. Such a pity." I bit my lip, swallowing the bitter words. In the years that followed, I opened a small architecture office. It wasn't a big firm, but it was my passion. Often I brought Emily along. She would doodle on paper while I met with clients. She was my only motivation to keep going. I tried to build her a peaceful world, to make up for what her grandparents never cared to give. What hurt most wasn't how cold they were to me, but how they treated Emily. She always looked forward to seeing them, preparing little drawings and stories to share. But most of the time, my parents just nodded distractedly, quickly turning their attention back to Nathan. To them, Emily seemed like a shadow, just an extension of me. Once, when Emily was 5, she asked, "Mom, why do Grandma and Grandpa only praise Uncle Nathan and never you?" I froze, unable to answer. I only hugged her and whispered, "Because they don't see all of me. But sweetie, I don't need their praise. I just need you." While Nathan celebrated his engagement at fancy restaurants, I scraped together every dollar for Emily's preschool tuition. When I applied for a small loan to expand my office, the bank required a guarantor. I went to my parents, hoping they could at least sign for me. My father's answer was blunt. "We can't take risks for people who lack financial management." Those words cut like a knife. I grew accustomed to being only a shadow in that house. They bragged about Nathan at every party, covered the living room with his pictures. Mine? Only one old high school photo, tucked awkwardly at the stairway corner. But I didn't give up. I learned to rise after every setback. Every small project I completed became proof that I could build my career with my own hands. Every smile from Emily lit the way forward. I didn't need my parents' approval, but deep inside, a small part of me still longed for them to see I deserved love. That hope faded year by year, and when tragedy struck Emily, when I had to run through the rain to that mansion, I finally saw the truth. To them, I was forever a burden, a shadow, the daughter who would never be chosen. That coldness forged a vow inside me. If they could turn their backs on their own blood, then I would never again let them hold power over my life. That morning began like any other. I made Emily a quick breakfast before school. She chattered about the song her class was rehearsing, her face glowing, hair tied neatly in pigtails. I kissed her forehead and promised to pick her up early to buy more paints. But that afternoon, the school called in a panic. The teacher's voice trembled. "Zoe." Emily collapsed in class. "We called an ambulance to Portland Memorial." The pen slipped from my hand, my body collapsing. All I could hear was my pounding heartbeat and the image of my little girl helpless under hospital lights. I rushed to Portland Memorial, barely aware of the road. In the ER, Emily lay surrounded by machines and tubes. My heart was crushed. "Doctor." Howard stepped out, his voice grave. "Your daughter has a congenital heart defect. Without surgery within 48 hours, her condition is critical." I clutched his coat, my voice shaking. "Please, do everything." He met my eyes firmly. "The surgery can save her, but the cost is high, around $90,000. We need payment confirmation to schedule anesthesia and the team." My knees buckled. I whispered, "My insurance expired last month." I was planning to renew it next month when I got paid by a client. He shook his head gently, his hand on my shoulder. "You need to find the money now. We can't wait." I left the hospital in the rain, clutching the medical files, my chest torn apart. Only one thought echoed in my mind. I must save Emily. I called the bank, begging for an emergency loan. The voice on the line was cold. "Without collateral, we can't approve it." I called old friends, but everyone was struggling. No one could help with such a sum. Desperate, I knew there was only one place left. Though I had sworn never to rely on my parents, Emily's life left me no choice. That night, I ran through the storm to my parents' mansion. Inside, lights glowed, music and laughter echoed. They were celebrating Nathan's engagement. I stood trembling at the door, water dripping from my hair, my whole body frozen with cold. I walked in, ignoring the curious stares of the wealthy guests. When she saw me, my mother, Margaret, froze, the smile on her face vanishing. She came closer, her hand on my elbow, whispering, "Zoe, not now. This is Nathan's day." My voice broke. "My daughter, Emily. She'll die if she doesn't have surgery right away. I'm begging you. Please save her." My father, Richard, appeared, his eyes narrowing with irritation. He said quietly, "Come with me to the study." I was led inside, the heavy wooden doors slamming shut behind me. The air felt suffocating. I threw the medical files onto the desk, tears streaming down my face. "Emily has a heart defect." The doctor said she must have surgery within 2 days. I've tried everything, but I don't have enough money. I'm begging you, just this once. I've never asked for anything for myself, never. But this time, it's my daughter's life. I saw my mother clutch her chest, her eyes flickering for a moment. But then she sighed. We've already spent everything on Nathan's wedding. The deposits are paid, non-refundable. You have to understand that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I cried out, a wedding can be postponed, can be done over. But Emily won't get another chance. She's only 7 years old, Mom. My father spoke, his voice cutting like a blade. You should have been more responsible. Why let your insurance lapse? Why such unstable? Work? This is the consequence of poor choices. I dropped to my knees, clutching my mother's pant legs, sobbing. Please, she's your granddaughter. She's your own blood. Don't let her die. For a moment, the room was silent. Then from the door, Nathan strolled in, champagne glass in hand, his voice mocking. Here to ruin my big day again? You're always like this. Can't handle your own life, and now you want the whole family to pay the price. Beside him, his fiancée Lauren pressed her lips together, the diamond on her finger glittering. I stared straight at Nathan, screaming, Your niece is lying in a hospital waiting to die, and you stand here bragging about weddings, cars, money. Do you have any humanity left? Nathan shrugged, sipping his drink. That's your problem, not mine. Everyone has to take care of themselves. I heard my heart shatter. I stood, my hands trembling as I unclasped the old necklace from my grandmother off my neck. It was the only thing my mother had ever promised would be mine, though she'd never truly given it. I placed it in her hand, my voice hoarse. Keep it. I'll find another way. My father spoke, as if trying to stop me. Zoe, be rational. Don't do anything foolish. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice steady. I've never been clearer. I opened the door and walked out, leaving behind the stunned faces of a few guests who had overheard. Someone whispered, How pitiful. Their daughter always causing trouble. I stepped into the rain, my coat clinging to my body, but I felt no cold. The chill in my heart was far worse. Just as I left that house, my phone buzzed. A message from the hospital. Please confirm payment before 12 p.m. tomorrow to keep the surgery scheduled. I stood frozen in the rain, my phone screen blurred by tears. Emily's face filled my mind, her peaceful sleeping expression, her innocent smile, her little voice saying, Mom, when I grow up, I'll build you a beautiful house. I bit my lip, my hand clenched so tightly it bled. If my parents could turn their backs, I still had to find another way. I would not let Emily die because of their coldness. I still remember that moment of collapsing on the thick carpet in my parents' study, my tears mixing with the rain soaking my face. I had no pride left, no dignity, only a desperate mother begging for her child's life. I clung to my mother's legs, sobbing, my voice breaking. Please, just this once, save Emily. She's your granddaughter. She's too young to leave this world. But she only looked down at me with eyes as cold as ice. Her words fell, sharp and merciless. No one forced you to be a single mother. Bear the consequences yourself. My heart clenched, as if crushed in a fist. I lifted my head, staring at the woman who once was my shelter, now an unfeeling wall. Every last flicker of hope died in that sentence. Trembling, I took off the heirloom, a necklace my grandmother had once promised me. For years it had been the only thing I believed carried a shred of love from family. I placed it into my mother's hand, closed her fingers around it, looked her in the eyes and whispered, From now on, I will never walk back through this door again. My father started to speak, but my determined gaze stopped him. The room fell silent, only broken by heavy breathing and the sound of rain lashing against the windows. I stood, my shoulders shaking with grief, then turned and left. I didn't look back. The heavy wooden door shut behind me, the latch echoing like a final period. I walked into the grand hall, the chandelier lights glittering above, making me feel small and lost amidst the opulence. All eyes followed me. I heard someone whisper, Their daughter is truly pitiful, always causing trouble. I bit my lip and quickened my steps outside. The storm seemed intent on sweeping everything away. The wind stung my face, but I felt nothing. I ran across the gravel drive, gasping for breath, my heart tearing apart. Darkness closed in, but inside me a different fire burned, the fire of determination. When I slid into my old car, my hands still shook. I turned on my phone, staring at the hospital's message. Please confirm payment before noon tomorrow to keep the surgery scheduled. I collapsed against the steering wheel, tears pouring like a flood. But within seconds, I wiped my face and took a deep breath. I told myself, Zoe, you cannot fall. Emily is waiting. Even if the whole world turns away, you must stand. I started the engine, the weak motor sputtering, then rolled out into the rain. The drive home felt endless, but all I could see was Emily lying in that hospital bed, her pale face, her tiny hand still clutching her old stuffed bunny. When I reached my small apartment, the clock was close to midnight. I sat at the kitchen table, spreading out every document, savings book, and bank card. I added and re-added, the small fee from a recent project, the little savings left, a few items I could sell. But all of it only amounted to a third of the surgery cost. I tried the bank again, my voice raw from crying. Please, I only need a short-term loan. My daughter's life is at stake. But the voice on the line repeated coldly, without collateral, we can't help. I hung up, sinking into the chair, despair washing over me. But then, I remembered my promise to Emily that I would always protect her. I couldn't give up. I opened my laptop, sending emails to every former client, every distant friend, anyone who might listen. I typed and retyped with numb fingers. I need help. My daughter needs emergency heart surgery within 48 hours. I can't lose her. By nearly 3 a.m., I was still awake, my eyes swollen from tears. My phone buzzed, but it was only a message from my ex-husband, Daniel. It read bluntly, I can't help. Don't bother me. I stared at the screen, my hand whitening with rage. Clearly, I could only rely on myself. In the silence of the apartment, I walked into Emily's room. She slept peacefully, her small face glowing in the dim yellow light. I sat by her bed, holding her tiny hand. Tears slid down again. I whispered, Sweetheart, I promise I won't let you go. Even if I have to give up everything, I'll save you. That night, I barely slept. Despair and determination wrestled inside me. I felt as though I was standing at the edge of a cliff, an abyss below. But beside me, I saw Emily's clear eyes, and I knew I had to leap, had to find a way. By morning, as pale sunlight seeped through the curtains, I was already at the table with a new list. I wrote down everything I could sell, the old wedding ring I still kept, the oak dining set I loved, even the beat-up car itself. Each item held memories, but I pushed them aside. I whispered, Nothing is more precious than Emily. I knew the road ahead would be brutal, but in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt strong. No longer the daughter dismissed as a shadow. No longer the abandoned woman, but a mother ready to do anything to keep her child alive. Stepping outside, I drew in a deep breath. The rain still lingered, the air sharp with cold, but inside me burned a fierce resolve. I whispered into the wind, Emily, wait for me. You won't be alone. I'll find a way. I began the race against time by selling everything of value in my little apartment. The oak dining set I had bought when I first lived on my own, where Emily often sat drawing, was bought for a pittance. I saw the ink stains still smudged across the table, my heart aching, but I signed the papers. The old wedding ring I'd kept all these years, a relic of the past, was handed over at a pawn shop. The owner turned it over and over, coldly declaring, $500, that's the most I'll pay. I bit my lip, accepted the money, and felt stripped bare. Piece by piece, the apartment grew emptier. I counted the cash, adding it to the account balance. But compared to the hospital's demand, the gap was still too wide. I called everyone I knew, from old co-workers to college classmates. Each time I began with the same desperate plea. My daughter needs emergency surgery. Please help if you can. But the answers were always the same. I'm sorry, Zoe. We're struggling too. Or, I wish I could, but that's more than I can afford. Each call ended like another knife to the heart. I felt like I was screaming for help in a crowded room, but everyone turned their backs. In the end, I took the risk of calling Daniel my ex-husband. Even though I had braced myself for his indifference, my hands still trembled as the phone rang. He picked up, his voice flat and tired. Hello? I choked up instantly. Daniel, please, I'm begging you. Emily needs heart surgery. Without it, she won't make it. She's your daughter, please help me. The line was silent for a few seconds before he sighed. Zoe, that's no longer my responsibility. You fought for custody, now it's on you. I have my own life now. I gripped the phone tighter, my whole body shaking with anger. How can you say that? She's your own child. But Daniel only muttered, I can't help. Don't call again. Then he hung up. I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face. In that moment, the truth was clear. Emily had only me, no one else. In despair, I thought about this small apartment. It was the only place that sheltered the two of us, the place where Emily and I had shared so many moments, from simple meals to nights when she carried her pillow to my room after a nightmare. My hands shook as I grabbed the deed and went to a real estate office to ask about pawning it. A man in a sharp suit flipped through the papers, then said, If you sign, we can release the money within 24 hours. But the maximum you'll get is around 50,000. You'll still be short. 50,000. That was all this home was worth. I nodded, tears spilling, but signed anyway. Walking out of that office, my legs felt like lead. I wondered if I had just pushed us into having no shelter at all. I brought the money straight to the hospital that same day. The cashier skimmed through the file, then said coldly, You're still short 40,000. If it's not paid before noon tomorrow, we can't schedule the surgery. My ears rang, my world collapsing. That night, I hardly slept. I sat in the empty living room, staring at the bare walls. Emily's drawing of us holding hands under the sun still hung there. I reached out to touch it, my heart aching. I made calls, sent messages. Every flicker of hope burned out. I even went to a shadowy finance company, but the interest rate they quoted was a death trap. I walked away, helpless. When I returned to the hospital, Emily was sleeping, her pale face pressed against her old stuffed bunny. I sat by her bed, holding her tiny hand. In her dreams, she whispered, Mommy, don't leave me. My tears fell onto her pillow. I whispered back, I won't go anywhere, sweetheart. I'll find a way, no matter the cost. Out in the hallway, I overheard two nurses. One sighed, Poor girl. Without money, she doesn't stand a chance. The other muttered, It's so unfair. People waste fortunes on parties, and here a child can't even be saved. I bit my lip, my heart breaking, but their words lit a fierce determination inside me. The next morning, I went back to the apartment and gathered everything left, some paintings I'd made in college, my grandfather's old watch, even my treasured book collection. I rushed from pawn shop to pawn shop, bargaining desperately. By day's end, the total was still tens of thousands short. Exhausted, I collapsed on a stoop as the rain began to fall. A single haunting thought filled me: was I running out of everything, even faith? But then Emily's face flashed in my mind. Her smile while decorating the Christmas tree last year. Her bright voice rehearsing for the school play. I clenched my fists and swore, No, I won't give up. Emily needs me. As long as I breathe, I'll fight. That night, I returned to the hospital. Sitting by her bed, I held her hand, watching the monitor lights flicker. Life felt so fragile, every second slipping away. My despair and determination tangled, transforming into a strange, powerful resolve. I knew I had hit my limit. And in that very moment, a thought sparked: if blood ties had turned their backs, I had to seek help elsewhere. Someone out there would still care. I just hadn't found them yet. The next morning, sitting on a plastic chair in the hospital hallway, staring blankly at the unpaid bill, I felt the whole world had abandoned me. Every door I knocked on slammed shut. Banks rejected me. Relatives turned away. Even my own. Parents ignored their granddaughter. Hugging Emily's medical file to my chest, I felt like I might collapse. Then from afar, a familiar voice called out, "Zoe!" I looked up, hardly believing my eyes. Standing there were Henry and Linda, our old neighbors who had lived next door when Emily was just learning to walk. Henry, his hair silver now but his hands still strong from years of labor, hurried toward me. Linda, petite with the same kind eyes I remembered, carried an old leather handbag. I shot to my feet, stunned. "Uncle Henry, Aunt Linda, what are you doing here?" Linda placed a trembling hand on my shoulder. "We heard about Emily from someone in the old neighborhood. The moment we knew, we came straight here." Tears spilled uncontrollably. I clung to them as if they were a lifeline in the storm. My voice cracked. "Emily, she has less than 2 days. I've sold everything, but I'm still short. I don't know what else to do." Henry's eyes were steady as he opened a large envelope and set it on the table. "Here's the rest. We sold our retirement land in Maine, the place we planned to spend our old age." I stared in shock. My lips trembled. "No, you can't. That land was your dream. Why would you—" Henry gently gripped my shoulder, cutting me off. "Zoe, listen. Emily is our granddaughter, whether papers say it or not. Blood isn't everything. Family is who you choose to love and stand by. And we choose you. We choose Emily. She is family to us." Their words ripped apart the loneliness I had carried for years. I broke down, sobbing harder than I had in years, finally feeling truly loved. I held their aged, wrinkled hands, which felt warmer than any embrace my own parents had ever given me. Linda softly wiped my tears. "Child, we've been watching all along. We saw you struggling alone, raising Emily with so little, yet with so much love. We couldn't stand by any longer." I hugged her, breathing in the familiar scent of apple pie she used to bake. Memories flooded back Linda, watching Emily while I worked late shifts, simple dinners at their home where I was welcomed as family. My heart shattered and healed at once. I whispered through sobs, "I don't know how to thank you. You've given up so much for us." Henry shook his head, his eyes calm. "Don't thank us. We're doing this out of love, not for repayment. Save Emily first. She deserves to live. And you deserve happiness too." With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Inside were checks enough to fill the gap I had been desperately trying to cover for days. My knees buckled, and I buried my face in my hands, crying uncontrollably. That very day, I brought the money to the hospital finance office. After reviewing the file, the staff confirmed and nodded. "It's enough. We'll schedule the surgery first thing tomorrow morning." Those words pierced through the darkness in my heart like a beam of light. I collapsed into a chair, weak in body but lighter in spirit than I had felt in years. When I returned to Emily's room, Henry and Linda were already by her side. Linda held her tiny hand, softly humming a lullaby. Henry sat by the window, watching the world outside as if guarding her from everything. Emily's eyes fluttered open, her voice faint. "Mommy, who are they?" I sat beside her and whispered, "This is Grandpa Henry and Grandma Linda, Mommy's old friends. From now on, you can call them your grandparents." Emily blinked a few times, then gave a weak smile, her small hand squeezing Linda's. The sight filled my heart with warmth I had never known. Linda's eyes welled with tears as she kissed Emily's forehead. "Sweet girl, don't worry. You'll be well again." That night, I sat in the hallway no longer alone. Henry handed me a cup of hot coffee, his deep voice steady. "Zoe, don't let the past choke you. Your biological parents may have turned their backs, but you are not alone. You have Emily, you have us, and you have yourself, the strongest mother we've ever known." I held the cup of coffee, my trembling hands slowly warming. I looked up at them, my eyes blurred with tears, but the smile had returned to my face. For the first time in years, I felt held, supported by something called family, not a family by blood, but a family born from love and choice. Inside, I made a silent promise. If Emily made it through, I would never forget this moment. The moment I realized that real kinship doesn't always come from shared blood, but from hearts willing to love and sacrifice. That morning, as the pale sunlight streamed through the glass window of the waiting room, my heart raced. I clutched Emily's hand tightly as the nurses wheeled her bed down the long hallway. She wore a light blue hospital gown, her golden hair tucked away neatly, her face pale, but her eyes stayed locked on mine as she whispered, "Mommy, I'm scared." I leaned down, kissed her forehead, and said, "I'm right here. You just need to sleep a bit, and when you open your eyes, I'll be right beside you." When the operating room door closed, it felt like the whole world collapsed. The sound of the lock echoed harshly in my ears. I stood still for a few seconds, then my knees buckled. If Linda hadn't caught me in time, I would have collapsed right there in the hallway. She wrapped her arms around me and said firmly, "Zoe, that little girl needs you strong. We'll wait together." We sat in the waiting room for hours. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, each minute feeling like an eternity. Henry held a cold cup of coffee but never drank it, his eyes fixed on the OR door, as if staring long enough would shorten the wait. Linda quietly whispered prayers, her lips moving without pause, one hand still tightly gripping mine to give me strength. The first few hours passed in silence. I could barely breathe, my heartbeat erratic. My mind replayed every memory, the day Emily was born, her first cries, the evenings we spent drawing pictures in our tiny apartment. I saw her goofy smile when she got a perfect score on a test, those tiny hugs I once took for granted, but now they were the only thing keeping me standing. By the 7th hour, an assistant surgeon came out to update us. "The operation is ongoing, her condition is stable, but we still have a long way to go." I shot up and asked urgently, "Is she in danger?" "Doctor?" He gently shook his head. "We're in control. Please keep waiting." I nodded, but once he left, my legs trembled beneath me. Henry placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Trust the doctors. They'll save her." Night fell, and the waiting room was lit only by cold fluorescent lights. I curled up on the hard chair, leaning against the wall, my eyes half closed but unable to sleep. The ticking clock felt like it pounded against my chest. Linda gently laid a thin blanket over me, whispering, "Rest a bit, sweetheart. She'll need to see her mom alert when she wakes up." I nodded, but inside, I couldn't stop seeing my daughter on that operating table. By the 14th hour, just as I was reaching my breaking point, the operating room doors swung open. Footsteps rushed, and then Dr. Howard appeared. His face showed exhaustion, his surgical cap still on, but his eyes sparkled with hope. I rushed over, barely able to speak. "Emily, how is she?" He placed a firm hand on my shoulder and said warmly, "The surgery was a success. We corrected the heart defect, and she's now stable. She'll need recovery time, but the worst is over." I collapsed on the spot, tears pouring down my face. Linda held me close, both of us crying and laughing at the same time. Henry turned away, quickly wiping a tear from his eye before whispering, "Thank God." When Emily was wheeled out, her tiny body still looked fragile, her face pale, but her chest rose and fell steadily with the help of the machine. I held her tiny hand, pressing it against my cheek. "I'm here, baby. You did so well." In the days that followed, Emily stayed in recovery. I stayed by her side constantly, watching the heart monitor with every beat. Linda brought me small meals and made sure I ate. Henry read old books aloud to me at night, his calm voice filling the cold hospital room with warmth. One afternoon, as the sunset filtered through the hospital window, Emily stirred and opened her eyes. I grabbed her hand, overwhelmed. "I'm here, Emily. You're okay now." She nodded faintly and whispered, "Mom, I dreamed. Grandpa Henry told me stories. I heard Grandma Linda singing too." Linda laughed through her tears and leaned in to hug her. "That wasn't a dream, sweetheart. We're right here." In that moment, I realized family isn't defined by shared DNA, but by who sits beside your child's hospital bed, hour after hour, hand in hand. Looking at Emily asleep, I made a vow to myself. No one will ever have the power over my daughter's life again. Not her birth grandparents, not a bank, not anyone. I will be her strongest shield. That night, I sat alone by the hospital window, watching the city bathe in golden lights. In my chest, the pain gave way to a new kind of strength. From that moment on, my life wasn't just about surviving or being recognized. It was about building a future where Emily could be safe, loved, and never again threatened by indifference from blood relatives. Henry came up behind me, placing a calloused hand on my shoulder. "Sweetheart, from now on, believe this. You're not alone anymore. We're here always." I turned to him, gripping his weathered hand tightly, overwhelmed. "Uncle, Aunt." "No, Zoe, you saved us. You showed us what family truly means." I sat in silence, tears streaming, but filled with quiet determination. I knew that starting tomorrow, a new chapter was opening. And in that chapter, Emily would grow up surrounded by real love, among those who chose to stay with us not because of blood, but because of heart. After Emily's successful surgery, it felt like I had been given a second chance at life. I spent hours in the hospital room, watching my daughter sleep peacefully and thinking about the future. Her small hand still bore the marks from IV needles, but her breathing was steady and warm. I knew something had to change. I couldn't go on drifting through life, relying on luck or the pity of others. I had to stand up and rebuild everything, so Emily would never again be caught in such a fragile and dangerous situation. As Emily slowly recovered, I began revisiting my old work files. The small architecture office I once had been shut down due to financial difficulties, leaving behind only a few blueprints and half-finished sketches. I looked at them with both sorrow and renewed determination. I remembered something Henry once said to me. "Zoe, you have a way of seeing the heart of people in every wall, every roof. That's rare." Their story became my first source of inspiration. Henry and Linda had sold their retirement land, the dream they'd saved for all their lives, to save Emily. I wanted to turn that sacrifice into the foundation of something meaningful, something that would carry the breath of compassion. I started designing a small retreat home, inspired by their wooden cabin in Maine. It wasn't meant to be luxurious or extravagant, but a space filled with warmth and connection, a place where every room invited people to come together. On the day I completed the design, Linda came to visit. I spread the sketches across the table, my voice trembling as I said, "Take a look. This is how I reimagined your cabin. Not just a vacation spot, but a place people return to and feel truly loved." Linda picked up a pencil. Her hand trembled, and her eyes shimmered with tears. "Zoe," she said softly, "you've poured your heart into this. Anyone who sees it will feel what family means." I began sending the design to a few former clients. At first, they looked at me with doubt. After all, I had failed before. I had disappeared for a long time. But when I presented my ideas, my voice no longer shook. I spoke about a philosophy of designing for people, that a house or a hotel wasn't just concrete and steel, but a place where real stories unfolded, where love, joy, and even sorrow were shared. One day, I got a call from the board of Westbrook Hotels, a regional brand looking for a fresh direction. They invited me to pitch my ideas. I remember that morning vividly. Henry handed me a freshly pressed blazer. Linda tucked a hot coffee into my hand, and Emily wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You got this, Mom. I believe in you." I carried all of that love and belief with me into the boardroom, where sharply dressed men and women were waiting. At first, they looked skeptical. "Is your firm just you right now?" one of them asked. I nodded. "Yes. But my philosophy is strong enough to turn a small team into a movement." Then I opened my sketches and began telling the story about Henry and Linda's cabin, about the quiet sacrifice they made to save one small life. I said, "A building shouldn't just look good, it should touch the heart. I want to create hotels that people don't just stay in, but remember because they hold moments that feel like home." The room went quiet. I saw one of the financial directors set down his pen and look at me closely. Then the CEO asked, "Are you confident you can deliver a project worth $2 million?" I answered without hesitation, "I'm not just confident, I'm committed. I've lived through the price of loss. I want to build spaces where no one feels abandoned, like my daughter once did. 3 weeks later, I received the confirmation email. I had officially won the $2 million contract. When I read the words, Westbrook Hotels is excited to partner with Winter's Design Studio, I broke down in tears. Emily ran over and hugged me tightly. You won, Mom. Now you can build lots of beautiful homes for people. I got to work with a small team of young, fresh-out-of-school architects. I deliberately chose people like I once was low on opportunities, but full of energy and heart. I told them, we're not just drawing walls and roofs. We're building stories. The months that followed were filled with hard work. I went with my team to every site, spoke with construction crews, listened to clients. I spent hours taking notes on the memories people shared, from honeymoon trips to family reunion dinners. Every detail found its way into our designs. The hotels slowly took shape, filled with warmth and human connection, not just cold, impersonal luxury. The media began to take notice. A local magazine ran a story on me, calling me the architect of the heart. They told my story, how I turned pain into purpose. The article spread quickly, and soon bigger publications reached out. They didn't just talk about the buildings, they highlighted the philosophy of designing for people that I stood by. I remember sitting in my apartment one afternoon with Emily, Henry, and Linda, watching a local news segment air my interview. The anchor asked, "What makes your project stand out?" On the screen, I answered, "I build not just for the eyes, but for the heart." Emily jumped up and shouted, "That's my mom!" Henry laughed and patted me on the back. "You did it, Zoe." From there, things kept growing. I expanded the office, hired more staff, and moved from the tiny corner of my apartment into a proper headquarters. The glass door bore the words, Winter's Design Studio, Design for People. Every time I walked through that door, I felt a deep sense of pride. I never forgot those sleepless nights in the hospital, when I thought I might lose Emily. That memory kept me grounded, reminding me why I started. And because of that, I never let money or recognition blind me from my purpose. Every project I accepted was tied to real people and real stories. Once, during a meeting with another hotel group, a young executive asked, "Where do you think your success comes from? Luck? Talent?" I smiled. From love. When you love, you start to see the soul in every brick, every window. That's when your buildings truly come alive. The room broke into applause. And in moments like that, I realized my journey wasn't just about supporting myself and my daughter, it was about creating a voice. Proving that even after the deepest heartbreak, a person can rise up and bring light to others. I watched Emily grow stronger every day, surrounded by the love of Henry and Linda. She ran around the office, clutching crayons, drawing hearts all over my sketchboards. I smiled to myself, thinking, it all began with this love, and it will carry me through the rest of my life. As my work continued to flourish, whispers about my biological family started to reach me through old friends and neighbors who still kept in touch. At first, I paid them no mind, but the stories kept coming, each one revealing pieces of a truth I never thought I'd hear about my parents and Nathan. Nathan, the one who had once been hailed as the pride of the family, was now in trouble. After my parents poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into expanding his furniture business into real estate, everything collapsed. I heard that the land projects he'd been promoting weren't even legally approved, leading to lawsuits from angry clients. News outlets ran stories about his involvement in a financial scandal that destroyed his reputation. And it didn't stop there. His supposedly perfect marriage with Lauren fell apart quickly. One morning, I spotted a tiny headline in the local news. Businessman Nathan Palmer caught an affair with assistant. I looked at the photo, blurry but still sharp enough to be undeniable. A pang of bitterness rose in my chest, but I wasn't surprised. I had seen Nathan's selfishness and disregard in every word he spoke. Him cheating on his wife was just the natural outcome. Lauren left Nathan soon after, filed for divorce, and took most of their shared assets. I heard that at social events, no one even wanted to mention Nathan's name anymore. From being the center of admiration, he had become a punchline avoided by his own friends. For my parents, Richard and Margaret, the fall was even harder. The furniture store, once the pride of the family and my father's favorite place to boast about imported high-end dining sets, started bleeding money. When customers lost trust because of Nathan's legal issues, they turned away. Sales plummeted. Operating costs kept rising. Loans piled up. My father was forced to lay off staff and even sell half the warehouse, but it wasn't enough to turn things around. My mother, who used to be a regular at social clubs, no longer received invitations to the ladies' brunches. People whispered behind her back, "That family has nothing left but bad press." I heard she became withdrawn, rarely left the house, her face always hidden behind heavy makeup. The lavish mansion where I was once thrown out into the rain eventually couldn't escape the hands of the bank. One day, I got a message from an old friend. "Zoe, your parents' house has been seized. There's a foreclosure notice taped to the front door." I quietly opened the attached photo. The once shiny iron gate was now rusted. A bold bank property management sign hung on the door. The windows that used to glow with light were now dark and hollow. I sat in front of the screen for a long time, unsure what to feel. The old anger came back, but mixed with a strange emptiness. I remembered the night they refused to help Emily, my mother's indifferent eyes, my father's cold voice. That memory left no space for sympathy. What I felt instead was waste so much money, so many chances, all thrown at Nathan, only to end up with nothing. After that, the rumors about my family spread quickly. Some said they saw Nathan drunk at a cheap bar, shouting about how the world had betrayed him. Others said Richard tried borrowing money from old friends, but no one dared to lend. Everyone knew he was drowning in debt. Margaret was seen hunched over at a discount grocery store, picking up instant noodles one pack at a time, no longer filling her cart like she used to. One afternoon, Linda came into my office holding a newspaper. She laid it on the desk and pointed to the corner of page 3. "Zoe, have you read this?" I looked at the photo of Richard walking out of bankruptcy court, his face gaunt, hair fully gray. Next to him was my mother, frail, empty-eyed. Beneath the photo, the caption read, "Palmer Furniture Store officially declares bankruptcy after over 30 years of business." I closed the paper and sighed. Linda looked at me and gently asked, "Do you feel sorry for them?" I stayed quiet for a long time, then replied, "I feel sorry, yes, but I can't forgive them. Because when Emily needed them the most, they chose a wedding over her life." Henry, who had been silently listening, finally spoke up. "You don't have to forgive them, Zoe. But don't let the past hold you down either. Take it as a reminder, money and prestige can never buy a real family." I nodded and looked toward the office, where my young team was working. On my desk, a photo of Emily beaming between Henry and Linda stood out above everything else. I whispered, "He's right. Family isn't in a mansion or a business. It's in the people who choose to stand by you." Still, sometimes when I drive past that old street, I can't help but feel strange seeing the abandoned mansion, the wilted garden, the cracked stone statues. It used to be their symbol of pride. Now, it's just a hollow shell. I'd stop the car, look at it for a long while, then drive off feeling strangely free. More and more, I believe in consequence. My parents chose to place everything on a selfish son, spoiling him to blindness, and they paid the price. As for me, the one they once treated like a shadow, I found my own path, my own real family, and a life no longer controlled by their coldness. And when people ask if I feel satisfied watching their downfall, I simply shake my head. I don't need satisfaction. What I have now, my career, love, and a healthy Emily, is proof enough that I've already won. One early winter morning, my office was buzzing like usual. Staff moved around with sketches in hand, phones were ringing, desks were covered with project files. I was reviewing plans for a new hotel when my young assistant walked in, her face uneasy. "Miss Zoe, there are 2 people here asking to see you." They said, "They're your parents." I froze. For a moment, all the memories came rushing back. The rainy night. I knocked in desperation, the cold eyes, my mother's voice saying I had to deal with the consequences alone. I took a deep breath, then calmly said, "Let them in." The door opened. Richard and Margaret stepped in, and it took me a few seconds to recognize them. My once dignified father, always with slicked-back hair, now hunched, with silver strands falling loosely. My once polished mother, now in a worn-out coat and dusty shoes. Their faces looked hollow. Their eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Zoe." My father's voice was raspy, trying to sound firm but trembling. "You've done well. We're proud of you." I sat still behind my desk, my gaze cold. "Did you come here just to say congratulations?" My mother cut in, voice cracking. "We're in a tough spot. The house is gone. The store is gone. Creditors are chasing us. You're the only one we can turn to." I raised an eyebrow. "So, only when there's no one left to lean on, you remember you have a daughter?" Richard coughed and avoided my eyes. "If you could lend us something, just enough to pay the last debt. After that, we'll manage." The room went quiet. I opened a drawer and pulled out an old phone, pressed a few buttons, then placed it on the table. The office filled with their voices, recordings from 3 years ago. "We've already spent everything on Nathan's wedding. The deposit's non-refundable." Then my father's sharp voice, "You should be more responsible. This is the result of your poor decisions." And finally, the dagger that never left me, my mother's voice, "No one forced you to be a single mom. You made your bed, now lie in it." The words echoed in the bright office. The staff outside had gone quiet. They probably heard it too. I turned off the recording and looked at them. "Those were your exact words." "The night Emily almost died because we couldn't afford the surgery, I begged. I knelt. And you turned away. I don't owe you anything now." Margaret burst into tears, makeup streaking down her cheeks. "Zoe, I didn't realize how serious it was back then. If I had known, I would have—" I cut her off, voice firm. "You did know. I told you, word for word. But you still chose a wedding over your granddaughter's life." Richard hung his head. His voice shook. "We were wrong. But Zoe, please, don't leave us now." I stood, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a black suitcase. I dropped it on the table. The lock clicked open. Inside were neatly stacked bundles of cash. I looked at them, voice cold as ice. "In here is the exact amount you need. Not a cent more, not a cent less." My mother looked up, stunned, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Zoe, you really—" I closed the suitcase and pushed it toward them. "But hear me clearly. This isn't forgiveness. This is freedom. After today, I'm no longer your daughter." The room fell completely silent. I stood tall, both hands resting on the desk, staring at them without blinking. My father raised his hand as if to say something, but then stopped, gripping the suitcase like a drowning man clutching a life raft. Margaret nodded shakily, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she choked out. I turned away, looking out the window where the late winter sun lit up the bustling streets. There was no longer any bitterness in my heart, only a hollow emptiness. I knew that this moment marked the end of a long and painful chapter. They walked out of the office, shoulders hunched, looking far smaller than the proud figures they once were in their grand mansion. When the door closed behind them, I stood still for a long time. Images of Emily, Henry, and Linda filled my mind. I whispered, just loud enough for myself to hear, "Freedom," at last. That afternoon, my new home was bathed in golden sunlight. The house sat in a quiet neighborhood, with a front yard full of rose bushes, Emily's favorite. On the long table in the living room, a birthday cake covered in white frosting waited with colorful candles, ready to be lit. The air felt so warm it seemed even the walls were humming with joy. Emily twirled around in her puffy pink dress, her hair tied high with a sparkling ribbon. She giggled and tugged on my hand. "Mommy, my friends are here." Children's voices echoed outside the gate. Henry and Linda were already there, helping me greet each guest. Linda hugged Emily tightly. "Little princess, you're the star today." Emily laughed and wrapped her arms around her neck. Henry gently adjusted the paper crown on her head. A princess needs to wear her crown straight to truly shine. Guests arrived one after another, colleagues from work, close friends, new neighbors. Everyone brought gifts, warm wishes, and beaming smiles. The house filled with laughter, the sweet scent of cake, and piano music played by a friend. I stood in the corner of the room, taking it all in as a deep sense of fulfillment rose in my chest. After everyone enjoyed the party, Emily ran up to me with a colorful piece of paper in her hand. "Mommy, I have a present for you." She held up a drawing of 4 people, me, Emily, Henry, and Linda, holding hands under a house with smoke curling from the chimney. Beneath it, she had carefully written, "My family." I choked up. For years, I had longed for something so simple, an actual family. No lavish parties, no grand mansions, just real love. I hugged her tightly and kissed her forehead. "Thank you, Emily. This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received." Linda stood nearby, eyes glistening. She softly said, "Zoe, you did it. You've built a world. For Emily, where she'll never have to be afraid, never feel abandoned." Henry nodded, patting my shoulder gently. "Family isn't measured by blood, but by the choice to love. And you chose right." The candles were lit. Everyone sang "Happy Birthday" in unison. Emily closed her eyes, pressed her hands together, whispered her wish, then blew them out. Applause erupted around the room. She opened her eyes and smiled so brightly, I saw an entire future glowing in her face. I looked around at the smiling faces, the laughter, the hands clasped in love. I whispered to myself, "Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who chooses to love you." Henry overheard and smiled warmly. "You're right. And we will always be a family." In that moment, I realized the sweetest revenge wasn't watching Richard, Margaret, or Nathan lose everything. It was in holding the happiness they'd never be able to reach, a home full of laughter, a true family they could never claim. The piano played again. Everyone sang and laughed together. I stood in the center of the warm, glowing room, holding Emily in my arms, knowing that from now on, she would grow up surrounded by real love. And I, at last, had a family. Every time I look back at the road I've walked, I ask myself, if I had collapsed that day, if I had given up when I felt like nothing but a burden in the eyes of my own blood, would I have ever found the happiness I have now? Maybe life had already given me the answer. Family doesn't have to be tied by blood. It's the people willing to walk through the storm with you. I share this story not just to speak of pain or consequences, but to remind you that everyone has the right to choose their own true home. Maybe you're living in a house full of voices but lacking laughter, or feeling like you don't belong in the place that's supposed to be family. I hope that when this story ends, you'll ask yourself, what does a real family mean to you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because I believe your answer could inspire someone else searching for their place in the world. And if you want to keep listening to stories about family, betrayal, and the journey to reclaim happiness, follow this channel and join me for what's next. Because sometimes, just one story can reignite the belief that happiness is real. We just have to be brave enough to go find it.